Hey guys, Leah here again, just to give you some more homeschooling tips. So today I have 3 or technically 4 tips to give you when your homeschooler is stressed. So again, I know a lot of you are coming into this and you're going to be schooling at home, even if it's whatever your teacher has given you, if you're coming from the public school or private school and having to carry out or implement the subjects and content that the teacher has given you to do. So it's not always easy. It's definitely going to be frustrating, but here are a few tips to help you get through it, to help more so from your student's perspective to help your child de-stress, because it's overwhelming for them too. So here are 4 things to show you. So this is one of the things that I use a lot, and granted, you might not have this at home. You could order off Amazon. That's probably where I order because I'm an Amazonaholic. Therapy grade putty. So if you don't have therapy grade putty, if you have something that they can basically squish in their hands, it makes a big difference. The nice thing about this one is it has different levels. So if you can see really closely here, it has extra soft, medium, and hard or firm. So it actually is not like your standard silly putty. It is firm. And so I've noticed when, especially with my son, when he was learning to read, he would get overwhelmed and stressed, and and my daughter even too, they were a perfectionist. And if they just got 1 or 2 mistakes, they just had a cow. So this made a big difference for them, and all I would do is I would say, okay, let's go pick a silly putty. They'd pick the color they want to use. Usually it was the extra soft because it's not as hard for them. And literally while they read, they just squeezed the silly putty. Sounds very simple, but it was completely a night and day difference. They would go from not being able to focus, falling to the floor, crying, or as my son, he does the opposite emotions of what is typical. So when he gets hurt or upset or frustrated, he laughs, and he almost to the point of spitting. It's crazy, but that's just how he handles it. So I know when he gets upset, he starts doing this little giggle laugh with like a spit. And so I know it's time to bring out some sort of method to help him cope with the emotions that he's feeling. And this has been a huge help. So first one is silly putty. If you don't have silly putty, try Play-Doh. If you have Play-Doh in your house, it really is just something for them to squeeze in their hands. Obviously, you just want to make sure that they don't get it on their clothes because this stuff is not coming out. So silly putty or anything that you can think of that they can just squeeze in their hands to help the stress, and it does make a big difference. So the next thing I have is, I don't even know what you call these, like an exercise disc. They're very thin and flat, but they're squishy. Before I became a PE teacher, my undergrad is in exercise science, and I was planning on going into physical therapy, and God changed my heart and got me into teaching. So I learned a lot through working with different physical therapists. We use very similar things like this to help with core strengthening and things like that, and balance. And then when I taught in the public schools, this was a great tool to use for adapted physical education. So I found these because unlike an exercise ball, these are nice and flat, and you can use them so many different ways. One, they're great for kids that really like texture, because you can see all the different bumps on the end. So sometimes my son prefers to use it this way. Sometimes he prefers to use it this way. And this one still has bumps too for friction, but this one obviously you can tell is a lot more. So I use these a couple different ways. The number one way that I use is when I was trying to teach my son how to say the Pledge of Allegiance. He would get wiggly and fall to the floor because he said he couldn't remember anything or focus. So I thought, I've heard a lot about core strength, and sometimes if you're focused on that, it'll help you focus everywhere else. And so I bought one of these off Amazon again, and all I did is just have him stand on it. So I literally would have him stand on it, and I'm not kidding. It was seriously, he couldn't say the pledge to all of a sudden he could focus and say the pledge. So this is great for that, so they can stand and do things. So if they're trying to do a spelling with you and you're trying to review their spelling words, have them stand on this while they do their spelling words. If they're working on sight words, do that kind of thing. You can show them their flashcards while they're standing. Another great thing about this one being so small and flat is for the wiggle kids that like to sit in their seat and squirm in their seat, they sit on this in their seat, which is great. And again, like I said, sometimes he really liked the really bumpy, and sometimes he'd like to sit on the other. And then he would literally sound silly, but wiggle his bottom back and forth while he did his work. And it just helped him focus, because it was almost like this sensory thing that he needed to do that made a big difference for him. So it's something to try. I love these things, and of course all of my kids wanted one. They weren't, I don't think, that expensive, and so I went ahead and got one for each kid and their favorite color, so that way it balanced out. And the other thing too is I don't fill it up super full, because then it gets too bowing, and then it's way harder to balance if you're standing on it, unless they want that challenge, and that's, I guess, another benefit. So if you have any other ideas for this, let me know, because I'd love to figure out some other things that they could use it for. I know in physical therapy we would do things almost like push-ups, like they put their both hands on their push-ups while they go, and that helped with the balance. We did that more on the exercise balls versus this. So but if you have any other educational ideas for using these, I'd love to hear. So another thing about me is, before I became a teacher, I was a graduate assistant at ODU, and I worked alongside some awesome professors, and one of them did the adapted physical education program there, and I learned so much through her. And one of the things that I learned is just different methodologies to help kids calm down or adapt to their situation. And so adapted PE was always a big part of my heart when I taught PE myself. So one of the things I learned is I had several students that came in who were on the autism spectrum, and I know one of the big things that made a difference for them is gentle pressure. So when they would get overwhelmed or stressed, if you knew and you were trained correctly on how to give them that gentle pressure, it would immediately start to calm them down. I had a runner that would like to run out of the gym, and at that time I was 7 months pregnant. All of my assistants were outside, and he went to run out to the bus loop where all the cars would be, and I had to chase him and then just give him a full bear hug and just talk very calmly and firmly, and he did. It would just, you could feel him relax. And so I started to implement that in my homeschooling journey with my kids, especially my son. And whenever he gets really stressed or overwhelmed, I will literally just come behind him and give him a gentle squeeze. And, and a friend of mine who's an awesome homeschool mom too as well, just reminded me that you can just say, you can do hard things. You can do hard things. So for me, that made a big difference. Just a firm hug and just very gently in their ears saying, you can do hard things. You can do hard things. It's almost like the broken record technique that my mom used to teach, and she was a teacher of the year for Norfolk Public Schools many years ago. A long time ago, I was going to make a weighted blanket for my kids and thought I was going to be all DIY, and I failed and did not ever do it. So I have a ton of beads for the weighted blanket that I never used. So my son was stressing one day, and I know when I had friends that were special ed teachers, they would use weighted lap blankets, and sometimes there's even the weighted vest, if you've ever seen those too. And I thought, you know what? I am going to take some of these weighted beads that I have, put them in a Ziploc bag, and I'm going to throw them in a pillowcase and lay them across his lap. And it made a difference. It really just calmed him down, and he could relax. And so I even thought about making some sort of vest where the beads would go on his shoulders to help him relax as well. So another thing about these beads, and again, I don't know if you can really see, they're just little tiny, weighted beads there. They actually help too. It's almost like the silly putty. So if you make a little weighted blanket for them, and if you're like me and you're just lazy or don't have the time, throw it in a Ziploc bag, put it in a pillowcase, and then while they're doing their work, they can have one hand that just either it literally lays on their lap, or the other one, while they're sitting there, they can just continue to go like this and just rub it. Sometimes those sensory kids, they need this, and that has made a really big difference for me. So just doing that. And if you want to really get savvy, you could sew something and do something, but I didn't. And if you can't go shopping, obviously you could try Amazon if they're going to still be delivering, but you can also use I know a lot of people have been buying up rice. You could use rice. You can use anything in your house that you think. If you have a bunch of beads, if you're a crafter, you can put beads in a Ziploc bag and then put it inside a pillowcase. If you have any other, I'm trying to think of something else that might work for this. Even if they had marbles, the kids would probably love marbles because they're bigger in texture, just to do that. And again, obviously you'd have to figure out if it becomes a distraction, and then you wouldn't want to go there. So again, Silly Putty was a really good one for me. The exercise disc and then the weighted beads made a big difference for my kids. So stay tuned, because I'm also going to be doing a video on toilet paper roll crafts for all of you that have all these extra pieces of toilet paper. So I thought, you know what, there's going to be so many extra toilet paper rolls now, and you're going to be home and be able to do crafts with your kids. And if you're anything like me, sure, I like the idea of crafts, but the actual doing of crafts is, no. I mean, I like craftiness, but I don't like the mess of it. So I actually made a little toilet paper telephone today that kind of helps with phonics, which I'll go over on my other videos. So stay tuned for some fun educational toilet paper crafts that the kids can do, but then you can also use it to help them get their schoolwork done. All right, thanks for watching.